Today, we're going to dive into Google's Consent Mode version 2 or V2 for short and understand what it is, who it impacts, and why it matters for digital advertising. So, what exactly is Consent Mode version 2? In a nutshell, it's an updated set of APIs and tags that websites can implement to collect and transmit user consent status for analytics and advertising cookies to Google's platforms like Google Ads in a way that aims to comply with privacy regulations like GDPR and e-privacy in the European Economic Area or EEA. Consent Mode version 2 works together with consent management platforms to obtain and respect user choices about cookie usage. When a user consents, their data is collected normally. But what's new in version 2 is how it handles data for users who don't consent. The deadline to implement Consent Mode version 2 was March 2024 to avoid losing key functionality like remarketing when users opt out of cookies. But it also has ripple effects on the broader ad ecosystem. Ad tech partners and agencies need to adapt their tracking and optimization to incorporate model data. And even end users are impacted through the consent experiences they encounter and the ads they're shown. The driving force is the EU's new Digital Markets Act, or DMA, which was first proposed in December 2020, and it's set to take full effect in early 2024 with a March 6th deadline for gatekeepers to comply. A core concept in the DMA is that of gatekeepers, defined as large online platforms like Google that control an important gateway for businesses to access users. The DMA aims to regulate these gatekeepers' market power and practices. The DMA was introduced amidst growing concerns across Europe over the dominance of big tech companies and their handling of user data and privacy. There have been numerous news stories and controversies highlighting issues like the lack of true user consent, opaque data combining practices, and anti-competitive self-preferencing by tech giants. So, why did the EU feel the need for the DMA when GDPR, its comprehensive data protection law, was already in place since 2018? Well, the GDPR focuses more on protecting individual privacy rights through rules like data minimization and consent requirements. The GMA, on the other hand, takes more of a competition and market fairness lens. Its goal is to prevent gatekeepers from unfairly leveraging data and platform control to box out rivals and limit consumer choice. Specifically for advertising consent, the DMA mandates that gatekeepers like Google must rely primarily on user consent, not legitimate interests, to combine personal data across services. Obtain consent through clear, repeated, non-deceptive user flows. Make it as easy to withdraw consent as to give it, and offer an equivalent non-personalized service for those who don't consent. This is where Consent Mode version 2 comes in, by introducing more granular consent signals and options to collect anonymized data on non-consenting users. It aims to help Google's advertising products comply with these new DMA requirements around user choice and data sharing. So, in essence, while GDPR cracks down on general data practices, the DMA is the EU's attempt to rein in the market power of big tech gatekeepers through new obligations and oversight, with a key focus on promoting competition through fairer consent management and data sharing practices in the digital ads ecosystem. Consent Mode version 2 is Google's direct response to adapt to this new regulatory landscape and the evolving privacy expectations of European users and authorities. So, how do the other gatekeepers in the ad ecosystem respond? Apple, TikTok, and Meta implemented the DMA with various adaptations. Apple introduced changes like allowing third party app stores on iOS, though with some resistance, arguing about the definition of its app stores and iMessage status under the DMA. TikTok complied by enhancing data portability despite contesting its gatekeeper designation based on its business scale in Europe. Meta prepared for interoperability in messaging and adjusted ad practices, but faced criticism over its compliance approach, particularly in how it handles user data and its paid ad-free tiers. Let's look closer at the two implementation options. Basic mode. If a user doesn't consent to add cookies and personalization, no data at all is sent to Google servers. This provides the highest level of privacy protection. However, it also means Google has zero insight into that user's behavior and conversions, making ad measurement, optimization, and audience modeling very limited. Advanced mode, when a user doesn't consent, personal data is still blocked, but Google tags send anonymized cookieless pings containing high-level browser location and conversion data. Google then uses machine learning to model user behavior and conversions based on these pings, allowing for more robust analytics and campaign optimization compared to basic mode. From a privacy perspective, although its protection is full of ambiguity, the advanced mode aims to be compliant by collecting no personal identifiers or ability to track individuals, keeping anonymized ping data separate from personal data of consenting users, only using the data for aggregate modeling, not targeted ads. However, some privacy advocates would agreeably argue that any non-consented data transfer, even if anonymized, violates the spirit of privacy laws like GDPR. Now that we understand the differences between basic and advanced modes, let's really unpack the implications of advanced mode for the advertising ecosystem. One of the biggest impacts will be on audience targeting and remarketing capabilities when users opt out of ad personalization. In basic mode, with zero data collected on non-consenting users, techniques like remarketing to past site visitors, targeting based on in-market affinity audiences, optimizing for customer match lists become extremely limited or impossible for that audience subset. Advanced modes, anonymous cookieless ping data, and conversion modeling helps recover some of those capabilities by filling the insight gaps of non-consenting users through machine learning. For example, while you can't remarket a specific user who opted out by model conversions, you can still optimize ad delivery and bids toward the highest converting browser location time of day cohorts. You can also create more robust audience segments by combining directly measured data from consenting users, model insights from non-consented peaks, and even layering in unified customer data from customer data platforms. This allows building richer, privacy-centric audiences based on real-world behaviors across channels. Measurement is another big area of impact. In basic mode, conversion tracking is blind to non-consenting users. But in advanced mode, while you can attribute conversions to individuals, the model conversion data enhances visibility into overall audience behavior and campaign performance. And having more complete conversion data ultimately allows for smarter budget allocation and bid optimization across campaigns through automated bidding solutions. So, from an advertising perspective, advanced mode helps preserve many of the data-driven targeting, measurement, and optimization capabilities that have become critical for effective digital marketing. However, this efficacy comes at a potential privacy cost that's important to address. While Google emphasizes advanced mode compliance through anonymization and aggregate level modeling, many privacy advocates argue that any non-consensual data transfer, even if not directly identifying users, violates core privacy principles and the spirit laws like GDPR. There have been numerous critiques that advanced mode is just a workaround to keep feeding Google's data monopoly, that the anonymized pings could potentially be re-identified and combined with other data sources, and that the entire premise of trading privacy for better targeting is unethical surveillance capitalism. So there are valid arguments on both sides that need to be weighed. On one hand, advanced mode does appear to comply with the letter of current EU privacy laws by not collecting personal data or tracking individuals without consent. But broader definitions of personal data, evolving attitudes toward privacy as a human right, and potential future restrictions like the EU's e-privacy regulation could eventually render these anonymization tactics insufficient or unacceptable. Ultimately, having both basic and advanced implementation options at least allows websites and advertisers to make their own determination based on legal risks tolerance and business needs. Basic mode offers a clearly privacy protective hardline approach, while advanced mode aims to strike more of a balance by preserving some advertising capabilities in exchange for transferring limited anonymized data signals. Only time will tell if this balance is truly tenable or if user and regulation demands for more robust privacy safeguards will eventually force a shift to basic zero data mode as the new industry standard. So far, we focused primarily on the European Union moves to regulate big tech through the Digital Markets Act and its impact on user consent for digital advertising. But it's important to recognize that these privacy and competition concerns around major technology platforms are truly global in nature. From the United States with state laws like the CCPA and proposed federal legislation to China's Personal Information Protection Law, India's Data Protection Bill, and many other national efforts, governments around the world are grappling with how to rein in the data practices of large tech companies. And this isn't just limited to advertising and consent. We're seeing escalating tensions over data security and national interests as well. A prime example is the recent discussions around potentially banning TikTok in the United States over concern that user data could be accessed by China. On one side, there are valid national security risks if hostile nations gain insight into the data and online activities of millions of citizens and government employees through apps like TikTok. But there's also the argument that such bans represent a slippery slope towards censorship, violating principles of free speech, digital freedoms, and the open internet that democracies claim to uphold. These are complex issues that need a lot of deep knowledge on delicate concepts that cannot be summed up to any clear right or wrong answers. Reasonable people can disagree on where we should draw the lines between privacy rights, security interests, and preventing monopolistic corporate behavior while still preserving individual liberties in our digital world. As consumers and citizens, it's crucial that we think critically about these topics and resist falling into partisan extremes of being either privacy absolutists or defending unchecked data collection. A balanced approach would acknowledge the need for some guardrails and accountability when it comes to how big tech handles our personal data and respects human rights. Measures like robust data protection laws, mandated opt-in consent rather than opt-out, prohibitions on deceptive data practices, enabling data portability and interoperability, but it would also uphold core democratic values like freedom of digital expression and access to information, prohibiting censorship of legal content, allowing ethical data use with user permission, fostering innovation and market competition. What's clear is that the debates around digital privacy, antitrust, and online freedoms are only intensifying as the internet's dominance in our life grows. The use DMA and consent mode version 2 are just one part of a broader global reckoning over the power of big tech. These issues impact all of us as digital citizens. So I encourage you to stay informed, think critically about the trade offs, and make your voices heard to help shape the future of privacy and digital rights, because this conversation is far from over. Through this video, we've taken a deep dive into Google's Consent Mode version 2 and the broader privacy landscape it operates within. Let's quickly recap the key points. Consent Mode version 2 is Google's latest framework to manage user cookie consent for advertising in the EEA with basic and advanced implementation modes. It was driven by the EU's new Digital Markets Act and its requirements around giving users more control over data usage by gatekeeper platforms. The advanced mode aims to strike a balance by allowing anonymized data transfer and conversion modeling for non-consenting users. This preserves some targeting and measurement capabilities compared to the basic zero data mode. However, it raises privacy concerns over whether any non-consensual data sharing is truly ethical. What is clear is that Consent Mode version 2 represents the ongoing tug of war between protecting user privacy and maintaining an effective digital advertising ecosystem that funds the open internet. From an advertising perspective, it's crucial that brands, publishers, and ad tech vendors adapt their data strategies and ad platforms to these evolving privacy restrictions and consent signals. But from a consumer privacy standpoint, it's vital to critically analyze whether measures like Consent Mode version 2 actually empower user choice and rights, or if they're just legal loopholes preserving the status quo of pervasive tracking. And we have to ask ourselves, Are these waves of new digital regulation and consent requirements truly about safeguarding our privacy? Or are they also mechanisms for governments and corporations to increase control and censorship under the guise of protecting us? It's a delicate balance between privacy, innovation, and freedom that our society is still negotiating. For those in the advertising industry, the goal is clear: get ahead of the curve and innovate new privacy first strategies, invest in consent management, enrich your first party data, and explore emerging privacy preserving tech like clean rooms and on device solutions. Because this regulatory wave is only going to intensify. Brands that embrace user privacy as a core value will earn trust and thrive in this new environment. And for privacy advocates and concerned digital citizens, stay informed and proactive. Your data and digital freedoms are not just personal issues, but part of larger political and human rights conversations happening globally. Make your voices heard through civic engagement, demand genuine privacy safeguards, and corporate accountability, not just lip service. Because we all deserve to benefit from digital innovations without surrendering our fundamental rights and liberties. The path forward already shows it won't be easy, so it's more important than ever to make fruitful discussions all together so we can create an internet that empowers privacy, competition, free expression, and human progress. An internet that's a force for protecting people's rights, not infringing upon them. Thank you all for watching and engaging with this crucial topic. I'll include some additional resources and ways to get involved in the description below. Let's continue this conversation together.